You're listening to Parasearch Radio with paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web at Parasearch Radio. The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the KTPF Reload Show. In case you're wondering what the Reload Show is about, if you haven't heard previous shows, these are the interviews that were conducted by good friends of mine, Steve and Sue Taggart, in the days of the KTPF radio show. Their own radio show ran for just over 4 years, broadcasting every week for over 3 hours. I joined them in the last 18 months of the show's run, but eventually the guys felt they'd just about had enough. It was a monumental effort to keep broadcasting every week for 3 hours. It was a wonderful show. But unfortunately they're no longer involved, and the shows have just sort of sat in the archives, so I thought it would be nice to bring them back to life and bring you the interviews that the guys conducted over those 4 years. They include some of the most interesting people within the world of the paranormal and some not so well known, but still, nevertheless still very interesting. We even have 1 or 2 rather unusual shows, including a live seance and other things along those lines. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed tonight's show, and this is the KTPF Reload Show. Enjoy.
This program deals with themes of an adult nature and is intended for a mature audience. They've landed.
You're in the right place. Online, on the web, and on air. All over the world.
Talk Radio.
You hear us, we hear you.
Yeah, good evening everybody and welcome to this edition of the KTPF Community Talk Show. My name's Suzanne. We thought about this show in 2007. Well, we thought about the KTPF in 2007, which basically stands for Keeping the Paranormal Friendly, which is our mission to try and bring the paranormal world together, share our findings and help move us all forward, encouraging you to share information, advice and most importantly, friendship. So, what's on this week? Well, we're going to be talking to a young lady who is a master dowser. If you don't know what one of them is, it's somebody who uses the dowsing rods to douse things, to look for things. And
find whatever they want to find.
Mind you.
We'll find out more shortly.
We will find out more shortly. Her name is Maria Wheatley. And I did ask her whether she was any relation to Dennis Wheatley.
Unfortunately not.
She said he might be somewhere along the line, but her father is also called Dennis. She's a second-generation dowser who is a leading authority in earth energies and ley lines. She was taught how to decode and divine the land by her late father, who was considered to be one of the UK's top master dowsers. Maria is an accomplished author of books on sacred sites and dowsing. She has researched the historic design canons of prehistoric sites, druidic ceremonial enclosures and the Knight Templars for many years, and she has studied the Neolithic Britain and Bronze Age prehistory of the University of Bath and alongside other professionals. So she's going to tell us all about that tonight, including Stonehenge and the Avebury stones, and we're also going to find out more about this dowsing.
And maybe the Michael line.
Yes, definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Maria Wheatley. You're a dowser, yes, Maria?
That's right, yes. I've been dowsing for, half my life, about 25 years.
Really? And what got you into dowsing?
Well, my late father was a Dowser, and I suppose I got brought up with expressing myself, not just like, growing up as a kid,
Yeah.
but trying different things like tarot cards, like dowsing. And I really took to dowsing and have never looked back.
Right, and you're out near enough every day, every week?
Yes, I do a lot of dowsing tours, and I teach dowsing. And now with the medium of Skype, which we're talking through, obviously,
Yeah.
I teach through Skype as well. So so it opens up a whole new realm of expressing and teaching dowsing.
Right, well, for those that are listening now and also later on our replay over on YouTube, can you tell us what dowsing actually is and what it's used for?
Dowsing is an age-old art, and I suppose most of us think of dowsing, and it conjures up the idea of a water diviner using a dowsing stick, and that is one expression of dowsing. It is very, very accurate at finding water. But dowsing can find anything, and it can communicate with different realms even. Dowsing, to define it, I suppose you could say, is the art of finding something, be that water, metal, or even earth energies, ley lines. Dowsing detects something, and it detects something that you wish to find.
Yeah, I see. And do you know why people started dowsing and what form did it take?
Dowsing started, one of the very early recordings of dowsing comes from a cave, actually, dating back to about 6000 BC. Which was documented by a master dowser called Sig Longrun, and that was in Algiers, I think. So dowsing does go back a long, long way in the kind of human psyche. It's really a natural part of us. It's like a sixth sense in a way.
Yeah.
Dowsing can kind of enhance what we feel because we can start to begin to ask it questions. We can ask the dowsing rod, for example, is there underground water beneath my feet? Is there this? Is there that? So it can really start to define questions quite accurately.
Right, and these stones that are around Stonehenge and Avebury, can you tell us a bit more about them?
Well, going back to sort of about 2500 BC, that's 4,500 years ago,
Yeah.
our ancient ancestors created stone circles, stone rows, not just sort of around Stonehenge or Avebury, but indeed across the ancient world. And in places like Egypt, they created pyramids around the same time, 2500 BC.
Yeah.
And quite often, these ancient sites were sited upon and defined sacred space, and that sacred space was either like a ley line or underground water, special type of underground water, or different types of earth energy. The power places like Avebury and Stonehenge were sited upon these types of earth energies or ley lines, and they created like a global network.
Right, so, sorry, I'm going through these questions here. Is there any connection between the dowsing and the Earth's natural vibrations, which is the same as the human brain?
Well, yes. The most intriguing thing that we found in the Avebury area, and when I say we, I mean Rodney Hale. He's worked with a lot of top authors like Paul Devereux and Andrew Collins and myself. When we decided to measure the earth energies, and I really want to kind of put across what earth energies are. Imagine like an energy coming out of the ground, not just in the earth, but out of the ground, rising up out of the ground. And they are found, like I said earlier, places like Avebury and Stonehenge. When you start to measure these energies, they seem to reflect quite accurately our own brain waves. You see, I'm talking to you guys and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next and things like that, which means my brain is in like a beta wave of activity, so it's quite active. Now, when I relax or I go to sleep or I meditate or even if I just close my eyes, my brain waves start to go into a frequency of around 7 to 10 hertz.
Yeah.
That's quite a magical frequency. Not only does it say I'm relaxed and I'm kind of calmer, But the Earth has an actual resonance. It's called the Schumann resonance. And that Schumann resonance is around 7 to 10 hertz. And it prevails at sacred sites, and it prevails across like Earth energies. So, for example, if you were to cross a ley line, if you were to cross or walk an Earth energy current, your brainwave starts to become in sync with that 7 to 10 hertz frequency. So basically, in a nutshell, Earth energies that resonate to that Schumann resonance relax us, they calm us, they put us into a different space. And when I talk to people that come to Avebury and Stonehenge and other sites alike, people do relax, they calm down, they sense something. It's like they become a little bit more sensitive to the energies of the stones, to the energies of the land. And that's because their brains are naturally coming into sync with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. It's a magical thing.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, I believe it mimics the chakras.
Well, yeah, if you imagine that you've got a ley line or an earth current and you put a standing stone that's rooted into that energy system, and it's rooted into it because a stone, when it is put into the ground, like at Avebury or at Stonehenge, is about sort of 2 to 3 feet below the ground, and the rest of it is above ground. It's rooted into the ley line of the Earth energy current, and it starts to behave in a particular manner. And this has been widely documented for many, many years. And it starts to create like 7 bands of energy that wrap around the stone. And we have 7 chakras, from the base chakra to the crown chakra. So again, the standing stones seem to be mimicking the human psyche, the human body in some way. There's a profound relationship. Now, these bands are quite intriguing. So just imagine a standing stone. It has sort of energy bands rising up through the stone. Second band above ground level starts to send an electromagnetic signal to the next stone, to the next stone, to the next stone.
Yeah.
Almost like that the stones are communicating and they're doing like crosstalk throughout a stone circle. And Rodney Hale, he measured the kind of frequency, he measured the energy wave that stone's emitting. So we can prove categorically that the stones on those energy bands, those chakra points, they are emitting an electromagnetic signal to another stone. And that's just that band there. When you look at another band, it's called band number 4 as it rises above the stone. It is truly remarkable because it now sends an electromagnetic signal in a linear-like ley line to the next stone circle. So sacred sites are in communication with one another. And some people laugh when I give this analogy, but it truly is. It's like Neolithic Wi-Fi. There's no wires at stone circles, but they're constantly communicating, like my laptop is to your laptop now via the medium of Skype.
Yeah. And can these earth energies heal you?
I think so. I think because the earth is a natural, well, the earth is a living being. It's a bit like us, we're alive, we're talking, and the earth's like that as well. And the earth has certain points upon her which are either good or bad. So, for example, the good earth energy points, they do resonate, like I said, really good hertz signal. They give you a feel-good factor. They help you to heal. They help you to feel better about yourself. But in essence, they help the body to heal itself. So you do get very, very good earth energies. But not all earth energies are good, for example. Some are exceptionally detrimental to your health, and
You see that?
they're injurious to your health. And one type of earth energy that is really negative is called the curry net or the curry grid. And your listeners can, Google it. And it was discovered by Dr. Manfred Curry in the 1950s. And if you imagine that the earth is surrounded now by fishnet, and you've got lots of little squares, lots of grid lines going from pole to pole and across the equator, that's like a grid system. And Dr. Manfred Curry discovered the Curry grid, which is named after him. And he noticed that when he started to take blood samples, it was where he took the blood was very significant. Because where he took the blood from would influence whether the blood would produce, kind of like be a good sample or a bad sample. And he noticed the negative samples would be always at a particular point. So he, with a lot of research, then discovered that there was this grid network surrounding the planet. And wherever these grid lines cross, produced detrimental effects. So these detrimental effects, known as the Curry grid or the Curry net, can influence us. So the Earth can give us good energies, or the Earth can give us negative Earth energies, and this is called geopathic stress. So we need to kind of view the Earth as, if we can understand the land upon which we live, if we can understand what sort of energies we live above, we will know whether we're going to have good health or bad health, for example.
Yeah. We've got a question in the chat room. There's a couple that's got a week spare coming up, and they're asking if there's a specific area that has ley lines crossing that has proof of their existence, and if so, where? They're from the northwest of England. So, do you know the nearest ley line place?
In the northwest of England,
Manchester area.
The Manchester area. I'm not, in all honesty, I'm not too sure about the Manchester area as such at all. But some stone circles that are around Cumbria, like Castle Rig, and some in Derbyshire, like there's a stone circle I think called the Nine Maidens.
Yeah.
They are nexus points. You will always find a lot of crossing Earth energies there. Also in Manchester, if Manchester has, for example, a medieval church or cathedral in some way, they are again nexus points of the crossing points of ley lines, because you have medieval masons and preceding them, the Knights Templar. They would use ley lines to grid out the axis lines of churches. So you don't necessarily need a stone circle in the Manchester area. Look at an old medieval church or an old medieval cathedral, take a dowsing rod, cross the axis line, that's the east-west altar to, like the bell tower section of the church, and I would guarantee you your rods will start to cross, because they're picking up on an energy line which that church was aligned upon to give it its ambiance, to give it its power, to give it its dedication. Now, if you look to a church and it was dedicated, for example, to St. Mary, you could guarantee that energy line going down the axis point is probably feminine or gentle in some way. Get a church dedicated to St. Peter, for example, St. Michael. You can guarantee the axis line or the ley line going down the church is predominantly male. And that's why you get certain churches dedicated to a female or to a male. So in Manchester, go look at your local medieval churches. They're going to be powered by ley lines.
Wow. Right. Okay. Now, we went to, being investigators, we went to a place in Wales, and to invest, to do a ghost hunt, so to speak. And they had a big stone outside, and we managed to get something from it. Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, it was. It had come from one of the local quarries that are known for this particular stone. Not only did we pick up EMF from it, but we also picked up static from the stone on a recorder.
Now, you live closely to a large stone circle. Have you ever felt these vibrations from them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the stones, again, where they're rooted into the ground and earth energy, and mounds as well, like Silbury Hill or burial mounds, we have picked up vast differences in electromagnetic static fields at the top of these mounds or standing stones, and they do seem to draw in from the atmosphere as well. So like an electrostatic field is drawn in through the atmosphere as much as from the ground. So they're like beacon points, and they do draw in this energy. And if we kind of interact with that energy by putting our hand towards it or putting a dowsing rod towards it, we should, if we go slowly and really kind of sensitize to the stone, begin to feel the energy passing through it, especially electrostatic fields.
Right, we've got another question for you. Can you ask Maria, this is from Paul, Ace Paradox, if you have ever detected a slow pulsing energy, 1 to 2 hertz, at West Kennet Burial Chamber?
Well, thanks for the question, Paul. That's a very intriguing question. I myself haven't picked up that low hertz at West Kennet Long Barrow, but I do know other researchers that have picked up signals there, one of which is called Stephen Marshall, who's writing a book about the Avery environs. He's a very good writer and researcher in his own right. And what I found at West Kennet, for example, the ancient Neolithic people around 2000 BC, they had a kind of musical instrument called a bull roarer, and it was like woo 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 woo. It'd give a whopping sound like that.
Yeah.
And when that was played in West Kennet, when young guys would be subject to listening to that sound wave and stood at a particular point in West Kennet Barrow, they saw one particular stone open up like a portal. So Steve is joining some dots and suggesting that, for instance, that kind of sound, that hertz, which I think was actually 7 to 13 hertz. I think it was about 13 hertz actually. He said that interacts with our brain, and it can make stones appear like portals, open up these black swirling holes. And that was seen by quite a few people independently, not knowing what they were going to see. So yes, sound and hertz frequency definitely affects our mind, so that we can literally walk through walls.
God. Why do you think ley lines and earth energies integrated into sacred sites?
I think that ancient man saw the potential of harnessing power. And so that certain sites were aligned upon ley lines. And some ley lines, there's lots of different types of ley lines. One type of ley line that was widely documented by a top geomancer called John Michel, for instance. He said that some ley lines aligned to a particular celestial event, be that the summer solstice or be that May Day, Beltane. And that creates like a solar force surging through the land at particular times of the year. I think our ancient ancestors could see that. They've sighted the stone circle and the construct upon that energy line to harness that energy. And that was widely documented throughout ancient China. They create a whole science to explain this called feng shui or feng shui, depending on how you want to say it. They said, that by harnessing these energies, you tap into it and you can diminish it or you can enhance it. So I think our ancient ancestors knew how to control earth energy. They knew how to control ley lines.
Now, you've talked about ley lines, and we've also talked, I've heard you talk about grid lines. What's the difference?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because there is a significant difference. If we look at the definition of a ley line, going back to basics, so to speak, that the whole phrase was coined by Alfred Watkins in the 1920s and the 1930s, where if you have 5 sacred sites or more, but the minimum will be 5, aligned in a linear line, that's called a ley, or a ley line as it's commonly called. And that can be a short distance, it could be a couple of miles long, it could be global, it could wrap around the earth and create a giant circle. That's a ley line, it has sacred sites upon it. A grid system is like a fishnet all across the earth, and a grid system is always aligned in a particular direction. Now, earlier I spoke about the Curry net or the Curry grid discovered by Manfred Curry. Now, that always aligns to the northwest, and the grid, those squares, if you like, of those fishnets, or fishnet rather, is always 3.5 meters apart. So, ley lines are linear and long, and grid lines are like squares, if you like, all over the earth, but they align to a particular direction, and they're a particular distance apart. So you can start to differentiate different grids, for example, from ley lines.
And I believe that most of these stones are magnetised. Do they contain an EMF, and can EMF affect you?
The stones are magnetised. I mean, a lot of them do have natural, like iron compounds in them, like minerals when they were developing, which makes them quite high magnetic stones. And I believe the most highly magnetised stones are the blue stones from the Preseli Mountains in Wales. Yeah. And it was author John Burke that said they're 3.5 times more magnetic than most other stones. And these are the ones that are believed at Stonehenge, even by archaeologists like Geoffrey Wainwright, for instance, he believes, as I do, that they're highly magnetized and that magnetic field can offer us a kind of healing energy. So when we interact with magnetism, we're quite magnetic ourselves. You know, our brain is creating electromagnetic fields, our body creates an electromagnetic field called by psychics auras. And when our kind of auric field, if you will, or electromagnetic field interacts with the stone, there's an exchange. There's an exchange of energy. It isn't like two static fields repelling each other. It's a joining together of fields. And I think it's the joining together of that energy that can create a healing environment. And stones promote that, earth energy promotes that, ley lines promote that.
Steve?
Yeah. Hi, Maria.
Hi.
Hi. I was just wondering, with this magnetism that we're talking about here at the time, could that be how a lot of these massive stones are actually moved?
That is a fantastic question, and one of which I'm looking into, and it does need more and more research. And I think you've really hit on something there, Steve, because when I was talking about those chakra energy bands earlier, I mentioned the second band communicates to another stone, and another band can communicate to another stone circle. But intriguingly, the third band can change weight. Now, it was reported since the 90s that when certain people place the palms of the hands against this kind of band, against the stone, they will either feel a force push them into the stone or away from the stone. If you're pushed into the stone, you feel heavier and heavier and heavier. If you're pushed away, you feel lighter and lighter and lighter. Well, I began to explore this with a pilot called Busty Taylor. And what we decided to do was use some weight detecting equipment to see if this anecdotal report was true or not. And the intriguing thing that we found was when you interact with this energy band, people do either literally put on a lot of weight really fast. For example, he in the experiment put on 2 stones within about 10 seconds. But you move away from the stone and your weight comes back to normal. I myself, and I'm always trying to lose a couple of pounds, I myself felt lighter and I got pushed away from the stone and I lost some weight. So I think, Steve, to answer that question, yeah, I think if the ancients knew how to manipulate this intriguing weight anomaly thing that's going on in stones, indeed they could move stones. And another author who's very interested in the Bosnian pyramids, he says a lot of the levitation frequency is 25 hertz. Well, lo and behold, what did we find when we measured some earth currents? That 25 hertz frequency coming out of the earth. Well, if you can manipulate the kind of stone energy band to be lighter, for example, and you could manipulate somehow the earth current in the ground at 25 hertz, well, whoa, you've got a formula for levitation. You've got a potential formula to move large blocks of stone across the landscape.
Wow. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yes. that sounds like a brilliant idea.
Raised by you, Steve, that, you know, people should be seriously looking at and investing time and money into. And what I find really sad with the archaeological community is they're more concerned about what they find in the ground than potentially what the people did with that energy.
Yeah.
And that's where I think if different kind of groups come together, like, I mean, you guys, you come with your own skills of, you know, understanding the spirit dimension, and all these different skill bases come together, we can answer problems, or we can raise questions that can answer different subjects, such as stone levitation.
On the subject of spirit, Maria, when we, as I said to you before, we're paranormal investigators, and we do use dowsing rods for you know, getting yes/no answers and stuff like that from spirit. And a couple of times we've been asked whether it's our own body making it move, you know, jittering or whatever, very slightly, or what. What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, that is a difficult question to answer, as I'm sure you've felt when people have asked that to you yourself. But
yeah.
With water divine, it's believed to be a muscle response, so that your muscles react to a physical thing, you know, like water under the ground or gold under the ground, whatever. But when it comes to kind of a spirit realm or something more intangible, it's difficult to define. So how I see it is that dowsing, when you guys start to use information dowsing to ask questions, to extract information, it's more about enhancing your sixth sense. And if we imagine that we have a kind of a higher self, a part of us that really is a part of the greater whole, a source, if you like, that has all of the infinite answers in all of the infinite universe, when we tap into information dowsing, we're tapping into that higher realm, that different dimension that is a little bit different from the third dimension that the water diviner accesses to make their muscles move. So I think if you're accessing and enhancing your sixth sense, and that's the ability which allows you to communicate to intangible things within the universe.
Right, and going back to your dowsing, when you dowse, does the way you dowse differ from your father's, or do you do it? Have you gained your own way of dowsing?
Well, I suppose it's like any kind of science, is that it will evolve and it will change and it will differ with, different aspects of people's personalities even. I mean, I suppose I was classically trained in a way. And I've also been taught by Chinese geomants, and that was a great privilege. And they too are classically trained. So even though I've had like a classical, training in dowsing, there's also a part of me, excuse me, that wants to experiment with dowsing. So I suppose I do change it in some ways. Excuse me.
That's all right. How do you know what you are dowsing is right? The answers you're getting.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry.
How do you know what you are dowsing comes out correct?
Well, before you do any form of dowsing, you have to go through like a little checklist.
Right.
It's a bit like flying a plane. Excuse me, I just got over a cold. It's a bit like flying a plane. You have to go through a checklist. The first thing I do before I douse for anything, and whatever I douse for, I put my hand close or over my solar plexus chakra area, and then I hold a dowsing instrument, be that a pendulum or nail rod, and I ask if I'm in balance, because to get really good dowsing answers, you have to know if you're in balance or not.
Yeah.
So we find that out by putting our hands, one hand, three hands, over our solar plexus, hold a pendulum or dowsing rod, and simply ask the question, am I in balance? Now, if you're in balance, the dowsing rod will swing towards your body, because you'll be holding just one dowsing rod. That will swing towards your body. And if you're holding a pendulum, for example, that will go into your yes response, because you've often probably set up yes or no responses if you're pendulum dowsing. So that's the first thing that you should always do prior to any dowsing exercise. Check that you're in balance. Because if you're not in balance, you're going to get weak answers, you're going to get feeble answers, and you could even get wrong answers.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that you do. And then always check that your yes and no answers prevail by just simply asking the dowsing instrument, give me my yes response, give me my no response. And you check that time and time again. So you do those things before you do any type of dowsing. Then dowsing is only as accurate as the person can define a question. So if you're, dowsing for, let's keep it simple, underground water, you visualize that, you tune into that, and everything else in the universe is tuned out. So you really do focus on what you're dowsing for. Or in your case, as paranormal investigators, for instance, you tune into that one question for that one type of answer that you want. And the better you tune in, the better you tune out everything else, the more truthful the answer. And Tom Grace, he was a master dowser. He is a master dowser, I should say. He came out with a really defining thing about dowsing. Well, hey, he said, sometimes I get wrong answers with my pendulum. What causes that? How can I define whether the answer is true or not true? And what he decided upon after much investigation was that after you've asked a question, is there underground water beneath my feet, or whatever your question is, you then ask, is this a Hermes response? And you will get a yes or no. And Hermes was a kind of a god, deity, which could provide trick answers. He was a bit of a trickster aspect of creation. So they set up what's called the Hermes response. So you basically check that your dowsing rod is telling you the truth, or basically taking you down a wayward path.
Yeah.
So I think Tom Graves came out with a really, really good defining way to down.
John Ghostwriter is asking, what does it mean when dowsing rods constantly spin round?
When a dowsing rod constantly spins round, 9 times out of 10, it's picking up on strong vortexual energy, like a vortex area. And a vortex area could be caused by a crossing point of ley lines, strong earth energy, the presence of a strong prevailing spirit or energy. Let's just think of anything as energy, whether it's a spirit or ley lines. It's really detecting something is very strong and it's being emitted in that area. And then you can use information dowsing to define what you've picked up. Is it vortex energy? Is it ley lines? Is it spirit presence? Etc.
Right. He goes on to ask, can chalk interfere with the rods?
Can chalk?
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good question, actually, because I live on Chalk Downland, for example, and so Avery-Henge and Stonehenge are sited on chalk. And the author I spoke about earlier, John Burke, he said chalk is a really good conductor. A bit like water or copper, like copper wires in your house, it can really do that. So yeah, chalk can enhance any type of energy that is sighted upon that, be that a spirit or be that a ley line. It enhances it. It gives it a little bit of oomph, if you like.
Yeah. Okay. Dave and Liz would like to know which is the best. Try again. Which is the best for dowsing? Crystals or dowsing rods?
Yeah, that's again another good fundamental question that has been raised by your listeners. Now, what I would suggest is what is best is what works best for you.
Right.
So if L rods work best for you, then stick to L rods. If a crystal pendulum works best for you, stick to crystal. I mean, I myself, for example, I love copper dowsing rods because copper is a conductor, and for me, it picks up on energy quickly. But, I would know another professional dowser that would say, oh no, Maria, my brass rods work just as well. And indeed they would for him. So it's really what works best for you, and stick to it, and you'll find that will be a good dowsing response if you stick to your good dowsing materials that work well for you.
Right, and can you use silver rods?
Silver rods will probably be quite expensive and quite posh, but they would work. Anything would work, from a hazel twig to a copper rod to a silver rod. If you want to get really posh, let's go platinum. But I mean, it's arbitrary because it's you working in relationship to an instrument that's enhancing your sixth sense.
Right.
So a good old-fashioned water diviner would say, hey, I can do that with a windswept hazel twig.
Yeah. Right, now in your work you describe 2 different types of water, and you've mentioned water tonight. What do you mean by this?
Well, as you know, I'm a second-generation water diviner, and a water diviner would say there are 2 types of water. The first type of water, we all know about it in England, especially you guys in Manchester and me down here. It rains and it rains and it rains, and it fills up the water table, and it fills up the aquifers. That is rainwater, and that's one type of water. To live above that type of water, by the way, is considered geopathic stress. It's carcinogenic. You do not want to have long-term exposure on that type of water. Every single dowser in this land and abroad would tell you that. It produces geopathic stress. So a water diviner, there's another type of water. And it's a sort of water that is literally independent of rainfall. It's born within the womb of Mother Earth, if you will, and where that water breaks through to the surface of the earth, that's your sacred medicinal spring. Where that water is poured by a well, for instance, that's your holy well. And this type of water emits a spiral energy field that is considered harmonic, it's considered medicinal, it's considered healing. So to a water diviner, following the old water divining laws, rainwater is considered geopathic stress, not good to live above. And by the way, wherever you get two crossing streams at a near right angle, basically producing like an X, a letter X, according to master doubters like Lethbridge, Tom Lethbridge, he said that creates like a vortex, and ghosts and spirits are really drawn to that. So they're kind of pulling in, they're like a magnet for different types of spirits and different types of entities. Whereas the spiral pattern of the Earth's inner waters, and by the way, a geologist would disagree with this categorically and say that it's physically impossible for the Earth to produce her water. But come on, she produces sulfur, she produces gold, she produces silver. Why not water? That type of water is considered very beautiful, very harmonic. So it's the two different things. And to live above the spiral energy pattern is considered to be benign. So it's positive.
Right. Going back to the dowsing instruments, one question that's come up is, why is the hazel twig better than many others? Why do people think it's better?
It's a time-honoured tradition to use hazel. And it's a time-honoured tradition because hazel is considered to be, by the ancient Druids, for example, quite a medicinal tree. Hazel also, in the wild, grows quite straight. So when you use a hazel twig in an actual Y shape, and you kind of hold the kind of Y end, if you will, it's naturally straight. Same as willow. So they were chosen, willow and hazel, because it naturally goes straight, whereas some twigs, for example, maple, they're all knobbly and twisty. So that wouldn't be good. That's so good for water divining. So it's because of the straightness why it's chosen.
Right, and could you tell me, please, does it depend on what you're looking for as to the way you douse?
Oh, absolutely. And again, you hit the nail on the head there. You can only really douse for that which you're tuned in for. So if you want to douse for one thing at any one time, that is definitely what you tune into. And if you can do that, and sometimes it's called, in dowsing terms, it's called the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm at Avery and I'm tuning into an earth energy current, I have to tune everything else out. And that can be quite tiring, actually. So a good dowser will know that they can probably only douse for 5-10 minutes at a time. Then they need a mental break, and then they need to go back to the dowsing exercise again. And those dowsers that seem to douse invariably hour after hour, how they can tune in for all that time is absolutely beyond me. I think a good professional dowser knows their limitations, and they're douse for 5-10 minutes and then just give it a break.
I've been to Avery. You know the Red Lion, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I know there's stones around there. Is this not Avery Henge?
Yeah.
What is Avery Henge?
Yeah, Avery Henge is the kind of archaeological term to define the stone circle and the sacred stones from Avery village.
Right.
So Avery is like the village that grew around the stones. Avery Henge is the monument itself, and a henge means a ditch and a bank, and it's quintessentially British. They don't appear anywhere else in the world.
Right.
And that's where you have a ditch on the inside and the bank on the outside. And at Avery, there was a massive ditch and bank built all around the stones. And the stones were set in that ditch and bank. And it's almost like the henge, the ditch and the bank, separate the sacred from the profane outer region. So it's a bit like a defining area, the henge. And it was very, very deep. I mean, it's silted up after, 4,500 years, but taken back to its original design, that ditch would have been really up to 60 feet deep. And because we lived in a chalk environment, that whole bank would have appeared like a white circle. It would have looked very beautiful.
Now, I've heard in your previous radio shows you talk about the male and the female of the stones.
Yeah, I mean, coursing through Avebury, you have two different types of earth energy currents, for example, and the stones themselves are defined as male or female. So if you have a diamond-shaped stone, which is literally like a diamond shape like you draw, like in a pack of cards, you know, that type of diamond shape, that would be considered the female form. It could be considered a yin stone. Whereas a kind of tall, literally phallic-shaped stone would represent the yang, it would represent the male. And if next time you go to Avebury, or any of your listeners, next time you go to Avebury, walk the West Kennet Stone Avenue, which is situated not far from the stone circle itself, and you'll notice that when you get to kind of like the brow of a hill, that all of the stones thereon are either a diamond opposite a phallic opposite a diamond, like yin yang, yang yin, yin yang, going all the way down the avenue, which was a processional way that led for 1.5 miles from one stone circle on Overton Hill to Avebury village itself. So the ancients carefully selected male and female stones, and this is reflected at Stonehenge. There's 2 stones as you enter the sanctity of the stone circle that are diamond next to a phallic, the male and the female, fertility.
What did Stonehenge originally look like, Maria?
Stonehenge originally was a magnificent monument. I mean, what you're seeing now is a shadow of its former self.
Right.
So, for example, surrounding Stonehenge, when you look, for example, when you go past Stonehenge now, you see all the stones. Don't you? Of course you do. You look out, you see the stones. But, you know, going back to its original design 4,500 years ago, you'd have been faced with a huge bank. So you'd only be seeing the top parts of the Stonehenge. Stonehenge was a secretive place. You wouldn't be able to see in the inside of the stone circle. The banks were very high. They've eroded away to mere bumps in the ground now. The stones themselves were very dramatic in colour and in composition. So if you were privileged enough to be able to go inside the henge bank, so to speak, and you could actually see the standard stones, you would see Sarton stone, which was a beautiful silver-like colour, glistening in the sun and the moonlight alike, which I'm really saddened to say English heritage now are not keeping the stones like they were.
No.
They have lynching growing over them like moss, and they're going to be all quite green and garish pretty soon. So that's what you'd have seen. You'd have gone through the henge bank, you'd have seen these beautiful silver stones, then you'd have walked into the monument by about 2 to 3 feet, and you would have come across the amazing blue stones from the Preseli Mountains in Wales. And they were so highly polished that they would have appeared like a midnight black stone, glinted with white feldspar, so they looked like a star-spangled sky. They were beautiful. You would have walked towards the centre, the near centre of Stonehenge, and you would have been met by a 16-foot-high standing stone that's slightly green in colour, flexed with garnet, red, and also flexed again with quartz, the jewel in Stonehenge. Stonehenge was a magnificent, colourful place. Today, we see it as grey. We see it with all the lynching on it, but that is not how our ancestors saw it at all. And also the acoustics inside of Stonehenge are quite interesting, because you could shout inside of Stonehenge and the people outside of the stone circle wouldn't be able to hear what you're saying.
Really?
Yeah, acoustically. Again, it's a very private, exclusive place. When I take people into Stonehenge on private tours, I really always like to say, look, you guys stand outside of the stone circle. I'm going to be on the inside, and believe me, I can shout.
Yeah.
Like, I shout now something, and they can't hear. So again, it was almost like kind of controlling sound, controlling energy at Stonehenge. It was a very, very intriguing monument, and still is today.
I've driven past it ages ago on the main road, main drag there, but and seen it in the distance. But am I right in thinking they're starting to stop people going there?
What's happened at Stonehenge at the moment is there has been millions of pounds invested in a new visitor centre.
Yeah.
The new visitor centre is positioned 1.5 miles away from Stonehenge. The old visitor centre, you see, was right by a road. You could go in there, you could do what you want, you could sit around, whatever. You can't do that anymore. The old visitor centre is now not there. You have to go to the new visitor centre, 1.5 miles away. You have to pay, I think it's 14 or 16 quid. Can't remember. You have to pay that to go into Stonehenge. You have to park your car. Then you have to get on a land train or a bus and be ferried by English Heritage to the Stone Circle. And the only vein, the only road that allows us free access to Stonehenge now is an old trackway that runs from Lark Hill down to Stonehenge. And English Heritage want to re-landscape that and take that away so that you won't have any access to Stonehenge whatsoever. It's the politics. It's about paying your dollar to visit an ancient site. It saddens me. I can understand why you need a bigger visitor centre, but I really don't think that was the appropriate way to go about it.
No. You hear a lot of stories about people going down there for summer solstice and that. What's the significance with Stonehenge and summer solstice?
You have just outside the Stone Circle itself, that's like Stonehenge, what we call it, about sort of, several metres away, you have another stone called the Heel Stone. So it's an outlier. It's situated outside the Stone Circle. Now, if you were stood right in the centre of the Stone Circle, looking out towards the Heel Stone, as it's called, at the summer solstice, round about June the 21st to, say, June the 23rd, a few days before and after as well, it would appear that when the sun rose at dawn at the summer solstice, it would align above the heel stone. It's a little bit out now because, the positions of the sun and moon change over the course of thousands of years. But going back to the time of 4,500 years ago, it would have been more accurate. And the sun would have come up over the heel stone. Today, English Heritage do open that up to thousands of people. I've been at Stonehenge for the rising summer solstice sun, and there's been 30,000 people there. It's a huge, huge event.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go down to literally go to Stonehenge, but I never actually got the chance. As I say, I've seen it from a distance, and by the sounds of it, I probably won't do to actually feel it, if you know what I mean, feel the stones. Steve was just saying it was actually the blue stone that was at that Wells place that we went, where we was getting the vibrations from. He remembered when you mentioned it.
Oh, right, yeah, well, definitely. I think he would have done because they are highly, highly magnetic. Yeah. 2.5 times greater than any other stone. That's the unique thing about the blue stones.
When it comes to Stonehenge and Averyhenge, does there not anyone know about Averyhenge so much?
Well, you see, in terms of like Kaching cash register,
yeah.
Stonehenge turns over, make no mistake, millions in a few months. And it funds a lot of the stately home restoration and all of that type of stuff for English Heritage. So they advertise it a lot.
Yeah.
It draws people in from all over the world. Averyhenge, on the other hand, the only thing English Heritage and the National Trust have there is a manor house and a car park.
Right.
So you pay your £6 to get into the car park, and you may not want to visit the museum or the manor house. Most people that are, they just want to access the stones, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it. You can visit there midnight for moon night. You could visit there first thing in the morning, and you don't have to pay. It's our free monument, and that is the brilliant and the beautiful and the majestic thing about Avery. It's free all year round. So I would say to anyone listening, visit Averyhenge. It's our empowering monument, and it's a place where we can be, and we don't have to pay, and we don't have to get on the Disney trail of like it is at Stonehenge, which these monuments, remember, were given to us, the British people, and that our rights are being eroded away for even visiting them.
I believe it's got the world's largest stone there. Can you describe it?
Well, Averehenge has the world's largest stone circle because it has 100 standing stones going right the way on the inside of the henge bank. And in the northern sector of the monument, it's called the Northern Inner Circle, you have like a central feature, a central megalithic feature. And one of those stones, there's two that remain, is a huge, gigantic standing stone. Wow, it is huge.
Right.
And it weighs 100 tons. And that, they didn't, and the archaeologists, when they were kind of figuring out how much it weighed, if you will, didn't even go down to the base level. It could be more. They estimated its minimum is 100 tons.
Mm.
And it's positioned to lean as well. So it's slightly leaning. So when you look up and you're stood by that stone, you're looking at it, oh, hey, this is leaning.
Mm.
It kind of looks like it's going to fall on your head or something. It is. But it's really, really big. And I think Steve would like to go there to do some tests there, because kind of like a blue stone, that is a pokey stone. And a lot of people that I've taken there and spoken to that have just, tourists standing there, they always say, oh, I really felt some electricity from that stone. Oh, I put my hand against that stone. And do you know what? I felt like a pulse or something. So it really is a strong standing stone, and it's gigantic. It's the largest in the complex, and it's the heaviest stone in the UK categorically.
Wow.
Right.
Steve?
I mean, why do you think places like Avery and Cornwall, for me, Tintagel is, I go down there and I can just feel the energy, and it just refreshes me completely. I just feel so relaxed. Why do you think you get that feeling from these places?
Well, I think we get the feeling from these places because, our ancient ancestors knew about the land. Yeah. They knew which parts were good, which parts were bad, and they monumentalized the good parts. So whether it's like, a pyramid in Egypt, a stone circle like Stonehenge, or an ancient site in Cornwall, or Boscawen, or the Merry Maidens, or whatever, they realized that these were sacred space, and they could change our consciousness. A bit like you're saying, Steve, you go there, you feel refreshed, you feel better for visiting these places. You feel enriched for visiting these places. And this is what I think our ancient ancestors did worldwide. They monumentalized these amazing power places, and even thousands of years later, people like me and you, we go there and we do feel something. That the land upon which they are sited emits these energies, and we just sense it, don't we?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just stand there with my palms down, and I can feel the energy just hitting me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly, Steve. You do. We go to these places and we interact. You're interacting with the energy. You're putting the palm down and you're feeling something, and that goes into our bodies. And there was an amazing experiment done in Europe, actually, by some European doubters. And they measured the electromagnetic aura around you with Kirlian photography, but not like the kind of mind, body, spirit fest where it's all the kind of colours around, but just the electromagnetic signal, which doesn't look as pretty, but is very, very accurate. And that's what they were measuring. And they did a kind of experiment where you did a before, I'm just stood on neutral ground, so to speak. I stand on an earth energy, or like you did, Steve, you put your palms down and you're feeling something. And then they did a day later, 2 days later, 3 days later, 4 days later, to try and understand how the energy was interacting with your body. And what they found was incredibly amazing. You stand on these earth energy points or wherever at a sacred site, and you're interacting with the energy for a short period of time, 3 minutes, that's all they use. Incredibly, your aura, your electromagnetic field through Kirlian photography eyes expanded and reached its maximum 4 days later. So you're interacting with the place for just for 3 minutes, like at Avebury, Tintagel, or wherever, but you take away that energy, which expands in your aura for 4 days later. I mean, it's incredible what these sites do to us.
Yeah. Now, you've wanted to prove beyond reasonable doubt to skeptics and others alike that powerful lines of force and mysterious earth energies, geometries exist. How far have you come since your father left off? Have you managed to do that?
I feel that I'm doing that. I feel there's a lot more work that I could do, but with people like Rodney Hale that can measure electromagnetic signals, I mean, I can show them where these are through the medium of dowsing and through my understanding. These guys can measure it. We've measured the energies of the stones. We've measured certain powerful earth energies. And then I know an engineer, a fascinating guy called David Webb. He can measure the ions in the air. You know, like when you have a thunderstorm, sometimes when a thunderstorm's approaching, you get a headache, you feel absolutely awful. And that's because the air is filling up with positive ions, which are actually bad for us. And then after the storm has finished, the air is clean, isn't it? It feels wow, and you feel really good. That's because the air is filling up with negative ions. And what David discovered over these powerful earth energy points was that they naturally release huge amounts of negative ions. So when you interact with these areas by standing on them, by sitting on them, or whatever, you're being bathed and showered in these negative ions. So I feel what I've tried to do, and like I say, I've got a lot of work ahead of me, is to say to people, well, look, the ancient site is a stone here. What's going on? Look, it's releasing powerful negative ions. Look, it's releasing an electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
Look, it's emitting a hertz frequency. So something is going on. And I think our ancestors just sensed it. They knew it. And they marked them with stones for their timeless monument.
Right, Dave and Liz want to know, is it possible to overload by standing on the ley lines? Standing in such energy fields surely should be dangerous.
That's very intriguing, because I think the more sensitive type of person you are, the quicker you kind of pick up on energy, and that's been my experience with working with people. So I think some people have different tolerance levels. It's a bit like with, alcohol, isn't it? Some people can have, 4 or 5 pints and don't feel anything. Another person can have 1 pint and they feel absolutely drunk.
Yeah.
And I think earth energy is kind of like that. We have different tolerances. And I think some people do not benefit from living above ley lines. That's fast-flowing energy, and that can really make them zappy and speedy, and they're not going to be sleeping at night, and they will really sensitize to that energy, whereas somebody else that's maybe a bit less sensitive could live above it and not be so affected. So I think it's down to the person rather than the energy per se.
Yeah. Right. Now, Maria, I've got your website here, which I'm letting everybody know, the aveburyexperience.co.uk. Where can people find out more about this apart from your website? You've written books, haven't you? You're an established writer.
Yeah, well, I've got books on Amazon. I've got Avebury, Sun, Moon and Earth, which is about Avebury. I've got some books on the earth energies of Stonehenge. Again, they're available on Amazon or my website or some bookshops. And to find me through my website. And have a look at the books if they appeal to you and you want to find out a little bit more about earth energies, order one. And I've got a book coming out in the next couple of months actually called Divining Ancient Sites, which really looks at ancient sites worldwide and different types of energy and the colors of energy lines and how energy really does affect us. And again, like we've been talking tonight about, defining that scientifically, but also defining it through our own sensitivity and our own intuition as well. So I'm really looking forward to that book coming out.
Yeah.
And they talked about sacred sites worldwide, from Serpent Mound in America to dear old Stonehenge, which is just down the road from me.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on the show. I wish you all the best of luck for the future. Obviously, if you do find anything out with your research, please let us know, and we'll definitely have you back on the show again if you're willing to do so.
Oh, it's been great. Thanks for having me, and you've raised some great questions, and I've really enjoyed the show.
Thank you very much, Maria, and take care.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
But, another show done.
And there's just one thing left for us to say.
Yep, and that is keep the
Paranormal
paranormal friendly. Good night,
Good night,
and God
everyone.
bless.
See you next week.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?